Thank you very much for having me this evening. My name is Ben Turney. I'm the CEO of Kavango Resources. We are a London-listed metals exploration company with projects in Botswana. We have 14,500 square kilometres spread over 3 main project areas. I've just returned recently from Botswana, where I've been conducting a roadshow and a visit of a tour of all of our projects. But the roadshow has been for our subsidiary, Kavango Resources, which is about to become 100% owned by Kavango. And today I'm going to present to you the progress that we've been making with Kavango and what the next steps are for what is increasingly becoming our flagship assets. So I just put this disclaimer up on screen as usual. Leave it there for a moment, give everybody a chance to have a read of this. But Kavango Resources is 100% owned, or about to become 100% owned by Kavango. We've recently made an offer to our former joint venture partner, Power Metal Resources, to buy them out of this project. And the company covers 2 main project areas. Up in the north, we have the Kalahari Copperbelt licenses. This has been our main operational focus over the last 18 months, and there's a lot of news flow that's about to come from this project as we move it to drill-ready status. And the Ditau licenses down in the southwest of Botswana, which is increasingly a technology metals play. We've got some really interesting assay results from this. But today what I want to focus on is the KCB, the Kalahari Copperbelt. Now, as we all know, copper is in extremely high demand. The green revolution is just in its infancy. And quite simply, there isn't enough copper in the world to meet the expected demand over the next 10 years. Now, the Kalahari Copperbelt is a region of Botswana, it's a region that extends from the northeast of Botswana down into the southwest in Namibia. And it's one of the world's leading jurisdictions for copper exploration. Our ground is in underexplored areas within the Copperbelt, where there was a consensus that overlying Kalahari sands made exploration much more difficult. As a company, one of our specialisms is we're very focused on geophysics. So we use remote sensing technology to build up models and maps of the underlying subsurface geology that is obscured from view. And this is what originally attracted us to this area. Now, we've recently had a SAMREC compliant valuation report completed about Kavango, which has valued the company at $8 million US, which is around about £7 million. Now, if you consider that Kavango's market cap today is £7 million, we believe that there is an excellent value case for the business as we move forward into drill-ready status. So in terms of the projects, this screen, we just quickly have a look at the recent progress that we've made. We've just completed a 10,000 sample soil sampling campaign across the Kalahari Copperbelt. This has been a really extensive piece of work. I think one of the things that the market hasn't really understood so far about the KCB is just quite how big the area is. And one of the main takeaways that I took from my recent visit to Botswana was just how much ground we as a company have to cover. We drove from Hansi or Gaborone up to Hansi. It's a 1,000-kilometre drive, heading sort of west and then north up into the Copperbelt. And in terms of our ground, we cover 5,500 square kilometres. Now, that is obviously a huge land package when you take into account sort of, how much ground there is to cover. And as a result of that, it's very important that the work that we do, we focus in on the high precision drill targets before we actually commit to putting the drill in the ground. The work that we've done has been painstaking. The team that we've built on the ground is superb. We are 100% staffed by locals, so we don't employ any expats anymore in Botswana. We have a newly appointed exploration manager, Fred, who has just taken over from John Lauderdale. Now, Fred joined us in December last year, and the plan always was that we would train Fred up within Kavango, and he would take over from John, whose plan was always to move on from us. And I'm glad to say that John's recently moved on to Sandfire. He's now the head of chief exploration geologist at Sandfire Resources for Botswana and Namibia. Now, John's an excellent friend to the company. He's done great work helping set up our exploration program to the level that it's performing at today, and of course it helps that he's moved to our biggest competitor and neighbour, Sandfire. So the Copperbelt itself, the main areas of discovery have been up in the northeast towards the town of Maun, and down in the southwest towards the town of Windhoek in Namibia. The ground in the middle has historically been viewed, as I mentioned at the start, as being covered by more Kalahari sands, which in turn has limited exploration in these areas. Now, we believe that this is what gives Kavango a key competitive edge in terms of our exploration across the Kalahari copper belt. And as you can clearly see from this map, you have all of these discoveries and prospects up in the northeast, you have all of the discoveries further to the southwest and the actual mining operations. But this ground in the middle is largely underexplored. Now, what's very interesting is immediately to the west of our Mamuno licenses, this block of 4 licenses that sits on the Namibian border, immediately to our west we have Rio Tinto, and again immediately to our north Sandfire. So we believe we are definitely in the right postcode, and we've geared all of our efforts over the last 18 months to giving us absolute confidence before we actually commit to our maiden drill campaign, which will be happening in the coming months. There'll be news coming out on this very soon. But we've done everything we can to both to de-risk this project and maximise our chances of success. Now, in terms of our licence package, our licence portfolio, the 2 main areas that we have. So currently within Kavango Resources, these licenses that are in orange, as you can see, are adjacent to ground held by Sandfire, the olive colour here, both to our north and to our south. And also there's a company called Kapore, which is an Australian listed exploration company that holds the ground in between. Now, what we're particularly interested in within the Kavango portfolio is this area which runs from the south of Hansi over to the Namibian border, sort of forming a crescent shape. We believe this is the southern boundary of the KCB, of the main area where you see the main controlling regional faults that are running through the KCB that control mineralisation. And with work that we've done both in terms of interpretation of geophysics survey, so magnetics and aeroborne magnetics, we believe that we've identified the right controlling structures along our ground. And this is where we focus most of our efforts on our soil sampling campaigns. And what we're delighted to say, which is all backed up by the recent announcements that we've put up, is that this soil sampling appears to coincide with the underlying geology. Now, from an exploration perspective at this stage, we couldn't really hope for much better. And what we're particularly encouraged by is that some of the readings that we've seen are very high, in particular for copper, which is obviously giving us a great deal of confidence as we move towards drilling. So in terms of the mineralisation style, one of the great things about the KCB is it's well-trodden ground. There's been a lot of historic exploration, particularly over the last 10 years, and a lot is known about the regional mineralisation, so these large-scale copper-silver deposits. Now, this is great for us because what it provides us with are very clear controls for our geophysical modelling. Now, the geophysics is obviously integral to our exploration strategy, and the fact that there have been so many discoveries within the Kalahari copper belt is obviously excellent for us because it provides us with very, very hard data points that we can use to augment our models to give us, again, more of a competitive edge with the interpretation that we apply. So in other words, what that's enabled us to do is to focus in on the areas within our prospecting licenses that we had the highest degree of confidence could be areas where mineralisation might occur, and then follow up with work on the ground in terms of the mapping that we've done, the actual walking of the ground, and of course this extensive soil sampling campaign that we ran. Now, in terms of the grades across the copper belt, they run at anywhere from 1% to 2%, which, if you compare that to a lot of the sort of porphyry hosted systems in other parts of the world, this actually is very favourable, together with the potential for open pit mining. So a lot of the targets that we're searching for, they're around about 200 meters in depth. So when we do come to drill a little later this year, we know that we're looking for relatively low hanging fruit from an exploration perspective. And the depth of the holes that we'll drill will mean that obviously we can cover a lot more ground a lot more quickly because we'll only be going down to 200 meters. So we are about to enter a very exciting phase of exploration for the company, pursuing exactly these deposit styles that are on this slide. Now, one of the things that I was most impressed about when I went out to Botswana was license 082. Now, currently license 082 is not within the Kavango portfolio, but we have plans where we're planning on putting our current LVR holdings into the Kavango vehicle. Now, the reason for that is we've got a lot of corporate interest in Kavango at the moment. The copper belt itself is extremely hot. It's one of the world's leading jurisdictions for copper exploration. And we saw while we were up there huge amounts of activity with drill rigs moving around, teams out in the field, and of course helicopters flying surveys. So this region really is on fire at the moment, and obviously from our perspective as a company, we were able to put together this 5,500 square kilometre land package, which really is very, very attractive. And by including the 082 and the 083 licenses, it will simply further strengthen the Kanye valuation. Now, what's very exciting about 082 is it looks like on the map like one of our smallest license areas, which of course it is, but it's 27 kilometres long. So it's a very large license in exploration terms in its own right. But of course, when you compare that to the rest of our portfolio, it seems like it's, well, obviously sort of an area that we haven't focused on so much. This is about to change in a very big way, because the soil sampling results that we released a couple of weeks ago were very notable for the high levels of copper that we saw from the that run along the regional fault that runs basically along this, what we believe are these two possible redox boundaries, which we've marked in red. Now, these are obviously an illustration at this stage. We have more detailed geological mapping that we treat as obviously commercial confidence. But what you can clearly see is that the controlling structure that hosts a lot of mineralization within the KCB is this contact point between what's called the Nguako-Pan formation and the Dakar formation. Long ago, it formed what was called a redox boundary, and long story short, this redox boundary trapped the mineralization as it passed through the region through hydrothermal activity. So the goal in exploration in the KCB is first of all to identify these potential redox boundaries, confirm that those redox boundaries are actually there, and then look for areas where mineralization might have trapped, obviously in sufficient quantity to become a modern mine. Now, 082, one of the things that we talked about in the past is that we believe it's an analogue for the Banana Zone deposit, which is currently being developed by Kavango Resources on the other side of Hansi Ridge to the southeast. Now, what you'll see within the Banana Zone deposit is this very sort of common sort of feature of these what are called anticlines, this sort of dome-like formation that you can see, which again was the part of the controlling structure for mineralization across the region. Now, very helpfully, I'm sorry, I said Sanford, I meant Khoemacau. Very helpfully, Khoemacau, the owner of the Banana Zone deposits, have published on their website some slices from their geophysics. And what particularly excited us about this last year is when we flew our airborne surveys in 2021, we immediately noticed the clear similarity between our data and the data that Khoemacau had published on their website. So this gave us a clue straight away that we could be looking at the right formational contact point subsurface. Now, we followed up with an extensive soil sampling campaign, and what this showed us is that the high levels of copper that we read, in excess of 100 parts per million, which for soil sampling is really very high, appear to run in a straight line straight down the middle of the formational contact point that we sketched out on the previous image. So we're very excited about this. The targets are about 150 meters in depth, and our plan is to get drilling here as quickly as we can. Meanwhile, on license 036, we've got a very similar story developing. License 036 is much larger. It's immediately to the south of the town of Hansi. This is actually where we focus most of our soil sampling efforts. So as you can see, we did a 5,000 sample campaign. And again, we got very high levels of copper, which appear to coincide both with the regional formations and what we believe is this possible redox boundary running through this license area. We have 4 main target areas within this northern section of 036, all of which are now drill ready. We could probably put as many as 30 holes into these targets, and even then we would have barely scratched the surface. The scale of opportunity that is in front of us now really is absolutely huge, and this is why we're so confident in this land package that we've put together, and more importantly, the work we've done in developing it. So what we have here is just a slice from the airborne surveys, and what's very interesting about this is that we have this very large conductor that coincides with the regional geology and also coincides with the soil sampling results that we have. So in other words, we've got what looks like a very conductive body that is buried down there. That's potentially a good thing, because obviously you would hope that a copper deposit would be conductive. But the fact that we have these soil anomalies at surface, this is telling us that this is a very high priority target for us to drill. And we can't wait to mobilize the rig a little later on this year. Finally, over at Mamuno, again, same story. Bit repetitive, but we have this Nguako-Pan Dakar formation contact that's running through the region. We've identified it at surface in areas that we weren't meant to have identified it. The consensus was that this was all buried and under sand. Well, our team on the ground have proven definitively that that's not the case. And in turn, that's guided our soil sampling campaign. Now, it was a slightly smaller campaign that we ran here with wider spacing. But where we've been very fortunate is that while we were out in Botswana, we saw that a helicopter survey was being flown in the licenses immediately to the east. We've managed to piggyback off the back of that, and we've engaged the flight contractor to run an airborne survey over this, and we hope to present the results of that very, very soon. So this was a bit of a bonus for us, enabling us to test the soil geochem anomalies that we've identified, looking again to see whether or not we have conductor targets underneath those. If we do, once again, this is all of the different data sources all lining up. We've got favourable regional geology that we've mapped, favourable soil geochem that obviously we've conducted, and of course if we manage to align that with favourable geophysics as well, we've got 3 clear data points telling us that this again is another target that we have to get out there and drill. So the message really is with Kanye, we're ready to drill. We are basically getting ready now to put the drill rig into the field and hopefully make it at least one discovery. So Roland, that's the end of the presentation. Should we move to the Q&A?
Quite a few different questions here. Let's start off with questions about the KCP drill campaign. And he said imminent, I think, or coming months, I think he said. Sorry, that's what I wrote down. Do you think likely in 2022 you're going to get started on that this year?
Yeah, definitely. So my goal coming into this year was to drill all 3 of our projects. We obviously started the year drilling the KSZ. We then moved to Ditau, and yes, we are going to drill the KCB this year. We have the funds to do it. We're lined up. We're ready to go. So we're looking to get that drill rig into the field as soon as we can.
And that was a lot of the questions were about the funding for the campaign.
Sure.
With what you've got, how far does that take you? Is it the whole way through the initial campaign or beyond?
So we have our interim results currently being prepared. We've accelerated those because we know that obviously people want to know what the financial position of the company is. I've seen a lot of speculation out there, which is ill-founded. So I can't obviously go into this because interims have to be published, but we will look to publish those as quickly as we can, which will answer exactly that question.
Thank you. And you said at the start about your experience with the geophysics. Could you talk to that a little bit for people who are not familiar with the story? What expertise or what's your take on, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, it's a real edge for Kavango. So Hilary Gumbo, who's one of our key founders, he is a geophysicist. So he brought with him a technical vision into this company that's actually really quite rare for a business of our size. Most other companies are led by geologists, and that's obviously a world apart from geophysics. Geophysics basically involves using modern remote sensing technology, and there are a range of different methods that you can use, where you seek to put a signal into the earth, and obviously that signal bounces back to a receiver. The data that you then gather, you have to put through quite sophisticated modeling. It's sort of quite heavily maths based as well. You have to build assumptions into it. But the idea is to take the data that's gathered, combine that with various different data sets to try and build as accurate a model of what the subsurface geology might look like in areas where obviously you can't see the host geology, so particularly when dealing with targets that are under sand. Now, with all of the geophysics that you do, with the best will in the world, a lot of it is educated guesswork, so it always has to be drill tested. So with the work that we've done down at Ditau and the work that we've done in the KSZ, we've essentially been flying blind. What's really exciting about the KCB is that we really have developed what's increasingly, a world-class skill set within the company because of how hard working in the KSZ and the Ditau has been. We've taken that experience to the KCB, and the slide that I stuck on, I talked about all the discoveries that there have been in the copper belt. Now that's fantastic for us because it gives us hard data to develop our models and to sort of increase the overall confidence that we have, because we've got this wealth of data to work with from all the other discoveries that have been made. This gives us a huge amount of confidence in the modeling that we've done, which in turn has guided our field exploration. And this is why we're so excited about the really positive geochem results that we've announced over the last month.
Thank you. Question about drilling targets. Have you identified your first set of drilling targets? And a second question to that, you mentioned they're quite shallow, 150, 200 meters. How long do they take? I mean, how many can you do in a week or in a month, that sort of depth?
So we've got literally dozens and dozens of potential drill collar locations. We've obviously got a huge land package, and if you think about it, each sort of drill is sort of about this in diameter. So we're basically putting pin pricks into this huge area of land. 082, which is one of our smallest licenses, the formation that runs through the region where we've got these high copper hits from the northeast all the way to the southwest, it's 27 kilometers long. It's huge. So, I mean, we could put dozens and dozens of holes into that target alone. This is part of the complication with the work that we're doing now, and this is why we've made sure we've been as thorough as we have, because obviously if we go off half-cocked and we use our drill meters in the wrong area, we could miss, you know, multiple discoveries. I mean, that license 082 alone, I mean, that's got potential to host 2 deposits in its own right. So right now we've got literally dozens and dozens of targets. Our goal is to narrow this down to run a 50-hole campaign. That's the sort of the number that we're looking at running as sort of our maiden campaign. In terms of then how long that will take, you're probably looking at around about 80 meters a day. We're almost certainly going to do RC drilling if the ground conditions will allow. However, if we have to use diamond drilling as well, and we're considering a multi-purpose rig at the moment, again, that's another one of the complications we're working through at the moment. Diamond drilling does take a bit longer. That's sort of around about 30 to 40 meters a day in the KCB, but typically you're looking sort of around about 80 meters a day. So that's pretty much completing a hole every 3 days and then obviously moving the rig along.
Terrific, thank you. And can you just clarify a specific question on 082 and how the depth of the cover and then potentially how deep are the targets?
So one of the innovations that we've deployed with Kavango is we've used a device called a Tremino, which is used in surveying, and this has given us pretty accurate depth readings on sand cover. It varies from about 5 meters down to about 20 meters. That's obviously closer up to surface. Obviously, the more that you step off the sort of the dome formation, the sand cover can get deeper, so it could go down to about 40 to 60. But we're not sure, in terms of the initial targets. We expect it will be sort of in the lower range because we'll look to test shallower targets to begin with.
Thank you. And next up, we've got the clarification on the order of things. Is it 082 and then 036, or both at the same time? How are you approaching that?
Well, it will be one after the other, and there's Mamuno as well, remember. So we've got those three areas that we focused on, each of which have got, you know, a lot of drill targets within them. My sense is we'll probably do 082 first, sort of having seen it on the ground. I think we're ready there, and that's the one where, yeah, we're feeling good about that one in particular. We'll probably then move to 036 and then Mamuno sort of as we work our way from northeast to southwest. If we do it the other way around, it would make sense for us to start at Mamuno and work our way up to 082. But again, this is a decision that we still got to make. It's something we're considering at the moment.